Hello, welcome back, Rise Up Nation, for another edition of Rise Up in Real Estate. And I'm just doing a brief introduction of an incredible conversation that I had recently with the Honorable Nick Bailey, industry leader in the real estate field. Been around for a lot of years, done a lot of things, integral in a lot of pieces of the puzzle and what makes real estate tick in the U.S. and around the world. And I had an opportunity to talk to him about what's going on with the NAR proposed settlement and his opinion on opportunities specifically in the settlement, like going forward, what can we look forward to? He tells some great stories, personal stories about his current listing that he just has under contract and is selling, and how the agent treated him, and how we can take that as a template for what to do with a seller, talking about value. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation that I had with Mr. Nick Bailey. Nick, if you're listening out there, I want to thank you for being on the show. Rise Up Nation, enjoy the episode. Nick Bailey is an industry leader, has been for years. I mean, I remember meeting this guy at an event probably, I don't know, 15 years ago. I said, who's the little redheaded guy over in the corner that acts like he knows everything and really does apparently know everything? It was this guy, and he's been with a lot of leading brands. He's been with a lot of other competitors in the market. He was at Zillow. He's done a lot of stuff. He's an industry leader, and he is here to give his perspective, and I appreciate him taking the time. And again, this is so bizarre. We were sitting in our staff meeting on Thursday about a month ago, and we were tossing this idea around, and I happened to have his cell phone number in my phone, and I texted him, and I said, would you do this? And he said, yeah, just tell me what time. It wasn't like there was no hesitation. I want you to pick up on this. These are significant people in the world, busy schedules, that are willing to help you because of a request. And I appreciate that. Nick, can you hear me loud and clear? Let's get a good mic check. Are you there?
I can. Am I good?
You are perfect. That's loud and clear. Thank you so much for taking the time. We've got some time to elaborate a little bit, and I know you have been in the throes of all of this, like very in tune. You probably know more about the lawsuit and more than you ever wanted to know, because you've been like in it for this whole time. And so now we, as realtors on this side of it, we are hearing all of this news and this change. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about perspective, like what you believe the perspective should be, and what is the opportunity for us as Remax leaders going forward. Thanks for being here.
No, that's great. Thanks, Tad. And hi, Mandy. I see you there in the front row. Nice to see you both. By the way, I like your new headshot. Thank you for updating it. That doesn't happen in the real estate industry. So congratulations. By the way, Tad, I got to say, I've been introduced a lot. No one's ever called me little. Who's the little redhead in the, like, well, I'm 5'11" and a half.
I eat a lot. So you're
well, that's a new one. No, thanks for letting me drop in for a few minutes. I never thought I would be jumping on calls like this to talk about litigation. I am not an attorney. I am a realtor. I've been a licensed broker for 27 years or something. And so I just wanted to share a couple of things with you, because Chad's right. I have been involved in my former role as CEO of Remax. I was involved in this lawsuit stuff for 4 years. And so I sat at the forefront of depositions and all the nuances. Some of it now not being in that role, I'm not at liberty to talk about. But more importantly, I want to share with you some of the things and I guess ways that I'm looking at this as a real estate agent and broker, because I'm seeing the full spectrum, and I think you all are too, right? From, it isn't going to change anything, to all out hysteria, panic, what is going to happen? Let me just start by this. This does not make me nervous at all. And here's why. In the last year or so, we have moved from a momentum-based market to a skills-based market. And from an agent to agents, if we're honest with ourselves, for a couple of years there, we were more order takers than we were skilled advisors. And I know that's an overstatement, don't get me wrong. But when you move into a skills-based market, we've got to focus on those skills necessary to help buyers and sellers. Now, here's the one thing in nearly 30 years that I know has happened every single year since I've been in this business. People buy and sell houses. Doesn't matter the interest rates, doesn't matter if I went through dual agency, sub-agency, all those changes. People thought they'd never double-ended deal again. Any of you around when IDX came out? And all those loser buyer agents that didn't have any listings were going to take top listing agents and steal all their inventory and put them on their websites and generate all their leads. And that wasn't fair. And look how it's just created more transparency and a better opportunity for consumers. So bottom line is things kind of change and adapt. Now, where I see this in terms of the lawsuit, these sound like really big numbers. And I watch the chat if you have questions. I can get into some of the nuances, but I'm going to give you more tactical details of how I'm thinking of how an agent should be prepared to react to this. And even though these numbers like the NAR settlement sounds huge, when you really break it down, it's about $6 an agent spread over a period of time. And so all of these moves are to pool this settlement fund, which I think will end up between $750 and $800 million. And it'll take years to distribute it. So what does this mean for you as an agent? This is, to me, I actually believe this, a good thing for the industry, because it's taking every agent and it's having them rethink or define and articulate their service level. And we've had to do that as listing agents for years, haven't we? We have to sit in front of a seller and compete maybe with other agents about, here's what we do as a listing agent. Here's what we charge as a listing agent. And let's be honest, there are cheap agents out there. There will always be cheap agents out there. There will be some that have phenomenal service. There will be some that are more order takers. You have to figure out many of these things on the buyer agency side. You either have to define what you're already doing, or maybe this is a time to redefine or better articulate your service. So let me give you a couple of examples. I sold my primary residence after 20 years in December. By the way, what real estate guy lives in their house for 20 years? That's weird to begin with. So here was my thing. I hire an agent. 3 weeks later, I fired my agent. And you can imagine that was not easy for me to do in my role at the time. And very amicable. She was a good friend. I've known her for 20 years. We were just on total different wavelengths. She was still operating in a momentum-based market, not a skills-based market. And I had some nuances. I'd been building a new house, so the timing of me moving was more important than the exact price. But here's where she came in and she said, hey, I'm going to give you my listing presentation. She was very nervous because I was CEO of Remax at the time. And she does a lot of business here, tons, and she's great. And she said, we're not going to put the house on the market for 10 days. And here's why. And she walks me through all of the details. She comes fully prepared with her CMA, all these great things that people do. And I know some of you probably do these things, but let me give you an example. She said, I'm going to have my house cleaning staff come over tomorrow and do a 3-hour clean. By the way, my house didn't need cleaned. Let's be honest. We're kind of OCD picky. And, but she said, hey, go with it. The stager then comes by. Come on, my house didn't need staged either, right? Do I not sound like a typical seller? And so the stager comes in, walks us through, my wife and me, some things and had some good recommendations. The next day at 9 a.m., I get a PDF of the stage, 2 pages of all the detail we talked about. An hour later, ding dong, FedEx drops off a package of 40 boxes with tape and packing material. And by the way, on the side of every box is her yard sign with her face and her name. 40 boxes showed up. Because of course, most people staging stuff, they need boxes to put stuff in. An hour later, the photographer comes, drone footage, does all these things. The next day, we have a lot of hail here in Colorado, so roofs are an issue. Her home inspector comes out and does kind of a pre-inspection, a walk around and inspects the roof, because it's the #1 thing in inspections in Colorado that goes awry. In a lot of southern states, it's mold. So depending on what nuance you might have, they wanted to just at least look for if there were any big things. We were a local move. We reached out to her moving partner, which was by Mayflower. And just to do the estimate, the guy shows up from Mayflower and has 10 more boxes with her face and name on them, just to do the estimate. Got us a 10% discount, saved us $1,000. We go through, we have a horrendous buyer. I would have sailed her down the river, but anyway, agent kept the deal together. Brought money to the table because we had an inspection issue like most agents do. That's why I firmly believe that there was no wrongdoing in these lawsuits. Because how many of you bought washers, dryers, garage door openers, thrown in $1,000 to get the deal done? Negotiations happen right up till closing. And then she says, by the way, once you move everything out, don't even wipe out the refrigerator. Brings the house cleaner back in. And trust me, we keep a tidy house. You know, when you move and lift up a couch, it looked like a homeless shelter in here. Like, it was horrible. I even texted her and I said, I am personally embarrassed. She said, don't do anything. Just leave, get out of there. 7 a.m., house cleaners come back and redo it. And then her closing gift was 2 hours with her handyman, of course, which we used. And so I give you some of these examples as this is what we have to do with our buyer service kit. And I believe you present to buyers agents, not transactionally. And we think as agents transactionally. We need to think of buyers more as you're the agent for the lifetime of that home, and you're also the agent for their lifetime. And what I mean by that, a lot of you have stagers, right? I can see some of you. If you have stagers that come in for your sellers, how many of you partner with an interior designer that once a home goes under contract, that the new buyer gets to do a 2-hour walkthrough with an interior designer? We just had a friend literally at our house this weekend. And yes, we built a new home, and you know, new homes show pretty well. She walked in, she said, oh my gosh, who decorated your house? She said, we've lived in our house 2 years. We don't even have anything on the walls. She said, I'm horrible at this. I would love some help. Just reaffirms what are the pieces of anxiety that are created in the transaction that you're looking to solve. Appraisal gaps are on the rise. Right now, statistically, it's right at 10%. It's 9.8% of deals fall apart at the appraisal process. Some agents do this. How many of you meet the appraiser at the property and bring comps to make sure that it comps out accurately and they don't miss a good comp? So these are the type of things. I give you just a couple of examples of, like, use your staging thoughts of the listing side, bring an interior designer for your buyer, do the moving discounts, have all of your partners. Make sure you're there to avoid an appraisal gap. Make sure to create some kind of pre-inspection process so that there aren't major surprises in the inspection role. And so I rattle on some of these examples, but this to me is where the industry is going to have to, as buyer agents, some of them are just going to be cheap, and some of them are going to have really full service that they say to a buyer, all the things that you're nervous about, I'm here to make sure that we get you to closing. And by the way, here are a couple of extra things that can help. Interior design discounts with painters or contractors. And I love agents that hand people a book to say, here's anybody that you need, or let me know. If you need an AV person, if you need a landscaper, if you need this or this. I needed a drywall person. Well, my agent had one and came at a discount. So as I think about these lawsuits and I watch people's reactions, crudely, I will say this: the ones that are scared, running for the hills, are like, how am I going to talk to a buyer about commission? And how is this going to work? Maybe didn't have very good service to begin with. The legwork was done by the listing agent. And so that's just going to transition a little bit. Here's the other thing that I think, and then I'll pause. I think this is going to be dependent on price range. So we've got Colorado Springs down the road from where I live. Huge VA market. Some of you in your areas likely work with a lot of VA buyers. And some of these rules are going to change, but as you know, buyers can't pay anything to an agent if it's a VA transaction. Well, if I had inventory as a listing agent in some of these markets, I would make sure that my my sellers were still sharing in compensation for a buyer's agent in a VA market. Whereas you get to very high-end luxury, I bet there's going to be a lot more negotiating from buyer's agents on rates. And so I think some of this will be determined by your area, some of it by price range. But if you're skills based and understand these nuances, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. And in fact, this is where maybe I sound overly optimistic, but whenever there is significant change, that's when we become relevant. 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, when rates were 3% and everything was 30-year fixed, let's face it, did consumers need us as much? Probably not. And so in a time like this, where your consumers have questions, you have questions, Now you get to be the trusted advisor, as long as you have the information and know how to present it. And I'll leave you this lastly. When I worked at Zillow, that was the years of the Zestimate that I know people still don't like it, but it was the craze that I was on stage, tomato throwing. We hate the Zestimate. Zillow's never been in this house. They don't know the price. And here's what I learned years later. The reality is agents didn't dislike the Zestimate. What they didn't like is the objection that it created at the dining room table that they weren't good at overcoming with their seller on value. And so this is, to me, once again, a Zestimate-esque example. I know it's different, but in my mind, it's similar, that we're not afraid of this change as agents or brokers. What we're afraid of is introducing new objections that we need to just be very good at working through. And so the more skills-based you are and you understand how to position this, you have nothing to worry about. And in fact, I think it gives you a leg up.
Pretty good stuff. You can tell he knows what he's talking about, and you see why I might have called him and said, hey, help a brother out, because he's in the throes of it. And does anybody have a follow-up question about something that he might have said that you want to throw? I think we have a couple minutes. If anybody wants to do a follow-up question, I could, but that's boring for y'all. Yeah, Donna.
Why did you say you fired that listing agent? I was wondering why you fired.
Did you fire the one you were describing, Nick, or that was the one?
The first agent. No, the one I described was the second one I had.
Oh.
Yeah, so the first one I got rid of because, get this, she thought I was leaving money on the table, priced my house $90,000 more than I wanted. Now, I don't know about you, but in all my years when I sold real estate, it was always the seller was too high and I was having to convince them to get to reality. And I knew she was overpriced. We got a verbal offer within 24 hours for $85,000 less than list price, which was $5,000 more than I wanted. And her response was, well, you can write it. I don't know if he'll accept it or not. And I'm going, oh my gosh, yes, of course, write it. And so she just said, well, let's leave the price how it is. And I'd like to do 2 open houses a week. That was her marketing plan. And I said, that's not going to work. And she didn't have all this service, built in. And I'm a big fan of like Ritz-Carlton and Nordstrom. Those are 2 of my favorite books, where I think any good service level is you anticipate the unexpected needs and you deliver on them before the consumer even knows that they need them. And that's an example of 40 boxes showed up at my house randomly to help me start to pack. I didn't expect that. It was a surprise and delight moment. And just being around this industry, as long as I have been, it's hard to impress me as an agent. And I was blown away by what this agent did.
Yeah, Nick, thank you so much. I bet that the first thing I'm going to do now that we're logging off here is I'm going to Google where I can get boxes with my picture on it. That's pretty cool. I bet some of the agents in this room have already started thinking, how in the world can I work that in? That's a pretty good tip. And you've given us just a lot of gold. And I appreciate you more than you know that you just took the time. Colorado, it's not 9 o'clock in Colorado when you got on the call. And I know that. I appreciate that about you. Let's give Nick a big round of applause. Much success and happiness. Thank you very much again, everybody.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Well, hey, that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening to Rise Up in Real Estate. If you liked hanging out with us today, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Rise Up in Real Estate. Also, follow us right now on your favorite podcast host to hear more episodes. We really appreciate you spending some of your time with us. And until next time, let's do each other a favor and all help each other rise up.